In this week's Restorative Vayera, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes a hard and strong look at the area of Sodom and Gomorrah and notices their daily behavior and priorities, I guess it was kind of like a presidential election in the United States of America, and he makes the determination that they need be utterly destroyed, he realized that he has to inform Avraham Avinu of what his decision is going to be. And after he does so, Avraham Avinu steps up to the plate and he starts to handle with HaKadosh Baruch Hu on behalf of the people of Sodom and Gomorrah and the other three cities. And after asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu whether he would spare the areas if there were to be found 50 individuals of piety within the general domain, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu answered yes, Avraham Avinu turns to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and he says, you know what, since I've begun having the chutzpah to engage in such a conversation with you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, questioning your decision, for after all, va'anochi afar va'efer, for after all, I am effectively afar and efer. And Chazal explained that afar and efer refer to the fact that Avraham Avinu is saying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, were it not for your beneficence, Hashem Yisbarach, I would have been reduced to afar in the war that I waged against the four kings for this resecuring of my nephew and brother-in-law Lot, and I would have been rendered efer in the cauldrons of Ur Kasdim, thrown into the fires of Ur Kasdim by Nimrod, by Amraphel. So who am I to even ask on my own behalf, let alone on behalf of others who have reached this nadir of terrible, terrible daily life? And ultimately, Sodom and Gomorrah is, of course, destroyed as we know it. But Chazal tell us in Gemara and Sota that Bischar, that as a reward for Avraham Avinu approach to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, stating that he fully well recognized that he is effectively Afar and Efer, and who is he to question Hashem Yisbarach? Because he referred to himself as Afar and Efer, his descendants were two specific mitzvos and two wonderful things. What were they? The Efer, para, the ashes of the red heifer, of the para aduma, and the Afar Sota, and the Afar that is taken and mixed into the water that a Sota drinks when she is suspect by her husband as having been unfaithful to him. And I wonder if what Chazal are telling us is not the following. When Avraham Avinu approached HaKadosh Baruch Hu and said, I know that the people of Sodom and Gomorrah have nothing going for them whatsoever. I know that they're no longer deserving of your kindness, of your smiling upon them, of your sustaining them in life itself. But you know, Ribbon Shalom, sometimes relationships reach a terrible dead end. And it seems like everything has been destroyed or needs to be destroyed, and nothing can continue further. And maybe, just maybe, even at such a point, things can regain a new life, a new relationship, a new affinity and loyalty to each other. And therefore, Kadosh Baruch Hu, even though the people of Sodom and Gomorrah indeed are deserving of your destruction, nonetheless, perhaps you could take another look, and maybe, just maybe, they could once again be permitted to continue their day-to-day lives and thereby coming closer to you, and you'll have such a relationship with the people of the world that you have created. And because Avraham Avinu was so determined to restore the relationship between the people of Sodom and Gomorrah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, you know what? I'm going to give your descendants two mitzvos. The one will be the Efer of the Para Aduma. Because when a person comes into contact with a corpse, with death, then he first realized that death is so final and life is so finite. And a person who comes into contact with death, understandably, takes a look at himself, though he is remaining behind, and he says, what is life? Yemei Osenu Shivim Shana, maybe 70 years at best, certainly in times of old. And we never know when we get up in the morning whether we will be granted by HaKadosh Baruch Hu the ability to walk, the ability to see, the ability to speak, the ability to live, the ability to be with our loved ones, the ability to think, the ability to articulate, the ability to accomplish. And therefore, comes along the Efer, the Para Aduma, and restores the quality of his chadshus, of renewal to a person who has had contact with death, and says to that person, you can now re-enter all of the camps of Israel. You can now re-enter life with all its fullness with a sense of determination, restorative in nature, to begin over again, to live today better than I lived yesterday, with a promise that I will live tomorrow even further. And no less, the children of Israel are to be granted the offer of the sota, because the practice of the sota is not, God forbid, to see to it that a wife who has been suspect by her husband as having been unfaithful to him will no longer be able to continue living with him, but rather it's just the opposite. That indeed, by drinking the waters, she will be proven as having been loyal to him. And even though, understandably, their relationship and their marriage must have reached a point that certainly one was no longer fully trusting of the other, if not both. And certainly one was willing to rather carelessly do things in a manner that would render her suspect. For after all, she's been warned by her husband in front of two Adim not to sequester herself with a particular individual behind closed doors, and she did so nonetheless, even though perhaps nothing occurred. And even though they have reached that crossroads and that impasse where they are so far one from the other, comes along the offer of the sota, and it enables the husband and wife to have a relationship and a love and a commitment to each other that is renewed and restored to be able to continue as one going forward in life, to continue building, fashioning, and supporting and reinforcing a bias nema b'Yisrael. So indeed, when Avram Avinu steps forward before a Kadosh Baruch Hu on behalf of Sodom, he's not a person simply of chesed, but he's an individual who understands the notion and the concept and the importance of restorative determination on behalf of restoration. And understanding this, we can all, this coming Shabbos Kodesh, turn to Kadosh Baruch Hu and say to him, please restore us to the ability of living life as we were blessed prior to the pandemic. Restore it to us once again, and we'll try harder. We'll work on our midos. We'll work on our avodas Hashem. Please, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is the Parsha of restoration. Have a wonderful Shabbos.